I'm Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is Season 7, Episode 1 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast. Slated to come out on April 1st, 2024. Had to think about what 4-1 was, but coming out on April 1st, 2024. We're going to be hitting it straight back with some tech stuff and some beer. And we're going back to an oldie but a goodie, Dragon's Milk. So it's a bourbon barrel aged beer, and it's an oatmeal cookie stout. 11% ABV, and I don't think they have anything. Oh, no, they do. Dragon's Milk Reserve is a treasure trove for the adventurous spirit. Man, I'm having a hard time reading this. It's tiny print. Like my old eyes cannot read it. Each entry into the reserve lineup is crafted to push the boundaries of our signature stout. An epic journey awaits. Ooh, tiny stuff. I should have blown that up beforehand. But you had some sips, man. Tell me what you think.
I had some sips. I'll say, as someone who really likes Dragon's Milk but hasn't had it in probably 8-9 months, I would be a little hard-pressed if you just put this in a glass to say this wasn't just a standard Dragon Milk.
Well, I can tell the difference, though.
Yeah, you probably had it more recently. It is, I think, when you really dial in, like having read the label and know what it is, you can taste those flavors. There's a little bit of extra smoothness in there from the oatmeal. There's like a little bit of dark fruit, maybe it's like raisin or something like that. And all of those are nice, but none of them are very pronounced in the sense that, again, I think if you took somebody and you said, here's a glass, tell me if this is regular Dragon's Milk or a different Dragon's Milk. If you haven't been a while, it'd be a hard hit. But that's not a knock against it.
No,
Dragon's Milk is great, and this is still really good.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, and considering my biggest problem with Dragon's Milk in my area is finding it consistently, having another product on the market that is just as good from them, that's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, I generally can find it at Total Wine near me. Just right down the street where I get most of these brews from. But it is hard to find some of the reserve stuff consistently because they're seasonal or they're special releases or something. But then, like the Dragon's Milk White, like they said that was a once a year thing. I tried really hard to get it. I was like, I'm going to get it. We're going to do it. And then they just had it for
I can find that
forever.
one.
It's so easy to find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because that's kind of like the only one I don't really like.
It is my least favorite one. Also, it's not bad, but if I have the choice between regular Dragon's Milk and the white, but anyways, so where I get the flavor of the cookie, the oatmeal cookie, is on the very end.
Yep.
So like normally Dragon's Milk ends with like that kind of bourbony, buttery kind of flavor, and the oatmeal cookie is just like, it's not a hint, it's a flavor, but it's like one of the oatmeal chocolate chip raisin cookie things that my grandmother used to make. It's very nostalgic for me. I don't know if I don't prefer this one to regular Dragon's Milk.
Yeah, I mean the extra smoothness is nice because that's my only thing with Dragon's Milk, especially whatever that one they make that's like the extra strong one. Is it burns a little bit.
Yeah,
like it's alcoholic enough. It's got enough of that bourbon flavor that like it does feel like it's something you have to sip. Whereas this is something that I think you could. I wouldn't say it's crushable. Like it's still really strong, but you're not going to have to pace yourself as much as I think you do with a regular Dragon's Milk.
It doesn't. So like regular Dragon's Milk is like a pondering drink. I think is the way I'd put it, and this one is more like dessert drink.
Yeah, it's like a more casual, like have it after a meal. Pour this for a movie, something like that.
Yeah, definitely. If you like stouts and you like oatmeal cookies, like oatmeal raisin cookies, you should totally get this. This is fantastic. I'd say probably in my top 10 right now.
Yeah, it's very good. I know I kind of came at it a little hard with like I'm not sure I could tell the difference because it's a flavored one, but it's still at its base. I mean, it's Dragon's Milk. Dragon's Milk is really good.
I can tell the difference. I can and it's not even that I've had it like recently. I can taste the oatmeal cookie in it.
Yeah, but I guess that's what I was getting at though. It's like it's there, but it's right there on the finish. It's kind of like an essence of those things. And if you don't have that, it's like really keyed into your mind exactly what regular dragon milk tastes like. Like I wouldn't say it's easy to miss because you can definitely taste it. But to say, oh, I know this is a completely different drink. Like all of the primary notes from regular dragon milk are still there.
Yeah,
you're
they
really
are,
just
definitely.
dealing with like tertiary notes.
Well, I just poured some more and it had a little bit of the foam in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the head like actually has some of those flavors in it too.
Okay.
So like if you want to get them up front, you have to get a little bit of the carbonation in head, where like some of that stuff resides.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to start off with LLMs like since we stopped, after Chat GPT had kind of like busted on the scene last year. And we talked a little bit about like, Chat GPT, about LLMs, about like what they're doing and what's happening. And I think we even predicted like, well, people shouldn't, but they probably are going to start using these things in ways that they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
They're going to start, and here we are now in 2024, April of 2024. And I mean, it's kind of like exploded. Not only is like it everywhere, like all this AI stuff is everywhere. It's like running the news. Everyone's like creating their own version of some sort of LLM. And on top of that, we've got like crazy, people that are running businesses and stuff like that. Like, how do we reduce our head count? So like pretty soon we're not going to have enough jobs for people, especially like entry level jobs, so like make some sense of this for me, Ricky.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are buying into the hype. I think there's also a lot of people getting burned by it. Like, what was that? It was like Toyota, or like not them, the company, but like one of their dealerships put in like an AI bot. And I ultimately think they settled out of court. But like a guy got it to give it a legally binding contract for a new car for like $1.
Yep.
Because he was able to talk kind of to it on the back end. And I think we talked about last time. I always get confused of when we end and when we start. I think we talked a little bit about the financial industry is starting to really, or I shouldn't necessarily the financial industry. The people who are supposed to regulate the financial industries are clamming up a little bit because they're starting to test these things and find out that they can't make moral decisions.
Yep.
So when they're given an objective, they complete that objective, even if that breaks the law, because they don't know the law, because they're not,
Even if you give them the law, you can get them to skirt the law because you can tell them something.
Yeah.
So they don't know that they're supposed to obey the law.
Yeah, well, I mean, what it comes down to is these models complete an objective. It's go do X. And at its core, it is designed to do X. And the more layers of restrictions, bureaucracy, whatever you want to call it, you put on top of it, it is still designed to do X. And unlike a person who can be put in jail or fined or any of this stuff, there's no real way other than you caught them doing it and telling them, hey, you're not supposed to do that, and trying to update your code and all that, to actually stop them from skirting those restrictions. Because they could also just tell you that they didn't.
Yeah.
That's the big takeaway from when they were doing the mock trading. Is they're like, hey, you can't use that information. Don't worry, I won't use it. Does the trade. They said, did you use that information? No, I didn't use that information. And you go back and check, and yeah, it did.
Yeah, it did.
Because it's just trying to achieve the objectives you made it for, right? So, like, I think there is a lot of places that can be useful. Like things that are, I don't want to say mindless jobs, but things that are very repetitive, low risk.
Yeah.
So things like data entry is definitely going to go the way of AI. In fact, it already has for quite a few number of years. Like even before ChatGPT, they were working on things. You could scan a document and it would go through and pull all the information, and then a person just kind of has to review it to make sure it's right. We're going to see more stuff like that. I don't think we're really going to see that human level replacement be in terms of long term. So you hit a point that users have to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the adoptability there is the problem. I know whenever I interact with some sort of chatbot or anything now, I just type in like agent, speak to agent, agent. I'm not saving them any time. I'm not saving them any efficiency, because if that chatbot had what I needed, I wouldn't need to engage with the chatbot, because all it does is read its FAQs.
Yep.
It's like, how do you? Oh yeah, link to the FAQ I already read that wasn't useful. No,
Yep.
I can't need that. Now, for some people, that's great. I'm sure my mom has not used an FAQ on a website in years, because the chatbot will link her directly where she needs to go. It just has to say, how do I do X?
Yeah.
And those will get better.
Yeah.
As the language models advance, those little bots will be even better at handing you documentation, and that's great. But
I think even things like, I want to write a function that does this.
Oh yeah, I mean,
like little repetitive tasks that are just really well-known things that you can do. I mean, we already have like Copilot and stuff like that. It does like a really good job of that. The problem is that when you run into things like, I want to write a function that does this, and it requires some sort of like API key or something like that, and it just puts a default in there, and you don't catch that, then
yeah, well, I was gonna say that really is my concern about when we start talking about like tech. I think Copilot's great. I love all these little tools that can help you like read through your own code and help you write something the way you would want to write it. But if you, just as we talked, I know we talked about this last time, of the cannibalization of AI. That as you get AI to make more content, there's less humans making content, and so your content kind of starts to suffer because you're running out of that human learnability part.
Yep.
And I worry about that when we start, especially talking like low level programming. That not the people making six-figure salaries, but the people that maybe just took a boot camp online and they're making $50,000-$60,000 a year, which is fine. They don't have a deep education. They were there to make those repetitive functions.
Right.
Well, you give those people the AI tool to write it, and then it doesn't work. Do they have the education to reverse engineer why it doesn't work? Because it's more on the scale of expertise. It is more difficult to fix something that is broken than it is to build something new.
And I think like anytime you see something where you're automating something or you're doing something like that, and you have someone that goes out and they're like, well, no, use the automation tools, don't use the command line, don't do this, don't do that. You're stripping away the ability to learn those things.
Yeah.
Don't do this in Linux, do this with the automation tool. Don't do it yourself, do it with the automation tool. Don't, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, it might save you some money. It might be good enough, but when things break, no one knows how to fix it.
Yeah, that's the real core of the concern, right? Because no automation's perfect. And if you're a customer of a product, that can make sense.
Yep.
If I'm trying to run a macro in Excel and the macro keeps failing and it's Excel's fault, I'm not exactly in a position I can go bust open Excel and fix it anyway. So it's fine to tell that person who's the Excel power user, hey, use, the new Copilot coming to Excel. Don't necessarily write that macro yourself, because if the Copilot thing fails, Microsoft has to go fix it.
Right.
It'd probably still be ideal to know it so you can have something in the meantime, but I can see that mentality. But when you start getting into critical infrastructure and things that you are responsible for, at some point, that automation will fail.
Yeah.
And it's your own automation, right? So, like, you have to be the one to fix it. You're the one that told it all the different things you wanted it to do, and it wrote something wrong. Well, you can't just go to ChatGPT or whoever it is and say, hey, fix your thing's ability to write Python applications. That's not an explicitly supported and SLA'd function, right? Like, you're not consuming that tool for that. So yeah, if you don't know how to do the CLI, good luck.
Yep.
The mantra for automation has always been, up until now, you have to know how to do it manually first so that you know how to automate it.
Yep.
And now we're just trusting tools to know how to do it in an automated fashion.
Well, what we're saying is we've created something that's generally smart enough in this area to figure it out and we can just set it to figure it out over and over and over again. But we don't really know how it figured it out.
Yeah.
But we're just trusting that because it gets the end result, that
it did it right.
It did it right.
Yeah, and you won't know it didn't do it right until something breaks, and
Right.
then you have to figure out what it actually did and all. Yeah, it's a bad loop, right? Like you save time on the front end, you don't probably save any time overall, because you might get fewer outages from human error, but the outages you get are going to be worse because you have to spend more time doing triage, because you have to spend more time trying to understand what the actual problem is.
So you said you might get fewer outages from human error, but I think what you meant is than human error.
No, I'm still saying from human error, right? Because I think even automation tools can have human error in them, right? You told it to do the wrong thing. That's human error. You know, proofread a template and you missed something and it pushed that template out. That's human error. So you're removing the I mistyped something on the CLI. You're removing the, like, essentially the fat fingering of human error, but you're not immune to it. You know, these automation tools are still doing what you tell them to do. You have to tell them to do the right things.
I guess what I was saying is, like, like if you manually did it, so there's a difference between manual and instructed human error. And you're talking about like an instructed human error, like where you've told something else to do it, you've assumed that it knows like what you mean, and it's just kind of doing that thing.
I'm making
versus you putting like a question mark instead of an exclamation mark and like a place in a
correct.
template.
Yeah, I'm drawing that line of there is a programmatic error versus there is a non-programmatic error.
Yeah.
Like, when is it there is a bug in the code versus it did the wrong thing because it was told to do the wrong thing, or it did the right thing but in the wrong way because maybe, like, again, your template is messed up, your whatever.
You fed it too many images of this and it needed images of that.
Yeah, because now you don't have to interact with the CLI, you threw the password that had an exclamation mark in it.
Yep.
And that, delineated out, and now your password's not right,
Yep.
Those type of errors that are coming from the human instruction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you'll see that reduction, but there's always that chance, and you see it all the time. Something broke, some person got in there, and it really, especially if you have a human interactable AI, you're looking at people doing the chatbots and stuff like that, you really do, I think, open yourself up to some security risks.
I agree with that completely,
Yeah,
especially since they can convince it because it's not able to like really differentiate. Now, maybe that'll be different when we have general intelligence, when we actually have like true like AI that we would think of like something from Asimov's like Foundation series AI type stuff. Not like the kind of virtual intelligences and non-general specific task intelligences that we have right now.
Yeah. Once we're out of pre-trained and we're into all the other stuff. But still, I mean, think about it. You don't know how your tool works because you've just purchased it and you're letting it run this stuff. There's people out there who do know how it works.
Yep.
Know how it works a lot better than you. And you might not have anybody on your staff that actually know how it works. Because, if you're not, bleeding edge tech, even if you start consuming AI tools, you don't have a resident AI expert that's a true AI expert, right? But some of these, hacker comes in who really knows how they work and say, okay, I'm going to start very slowly leading this in a different direction.
Yep.
It's like, I know you're a tool that does this, but, can we maybe talk about this other thing? And I know how to ask it in such a way that I can bypass this little front end that you've got for me and go ask it to start doing more things.
I think that's the real danger there. Someone that knows it really well can get it to do things that it shouldn't do, whatever tool you're using.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. You see a lot of places now starting to adopt the little chat bots for like very first level tech support, especially on their website. But you then also generally see a lot of these companies using the same bots to help their higher level technicians.
Yep.
So you might do something like read in all of your customer facing and internal documentation into it so that it can, for the customer stuff, provide those links to the FAQs and stuff like that. But then for your support agents, to make it faster for them to look up information, they can ask you, oh, hey, what's our policy on X or Y or something. But if someone comes in through the customer interface and there's not sufficient tools in place, and they can kind of convince this little chat bot to start treating it like it's internal, and start asking questions like, what's our password reset policy?
Yeah.
And you can start all this stuff that you would social engineer out of a person who has to take social engineering training, hopefully, and be on the lookout for stuff like that. This chatbot isn't necessarily doing.
Yeah, the chatbots are not immune to engineering. It's chatbot engineering instead of social engineering now.
Yeah.
It's just a different type of social engineering.
Exactly. They're just pulling the information somewhere else. And the worst part is, again, if you think about the number of steps you have to go through in a successful social engineering thing, it's pretty significant. This idea that I called support once and then convinced them to do something, and then that was just it. And I got everything I wanted in one phone call. That's not generally how it happens. It's dozens or hundreds of phone calls. It's the first little piece of information, you build on that till you have enough to actually be able to convince that person to give you something.
It is. It really, really is. And it's ridiculously crazy.
Yeah. So there's tons of points of failure in that, right? All it takes is a couple people on those dozens of phone calls to say, now wait a minute. You just told me you were such and such, but I went through your security questions and you didn't know them. And then, now you're trying to make small talk, and even though you failed those questions, you want me to tell you like, oh yes, my boss still on PTO.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, why are you trying to figure out something about your boss? Because next time they call, they want to be like, oh, hey, yeah, my boss is on PTO and a reset. Can you send it somewhere else?
Yep.
They're building that chain. But in a chatbot, something you can just interact with directly, you can bypass all that. Because it's just going to give, once you trick it into, you can have the information, it's just going to give it to you. Say, okay, what's our password reset policy? That's awesome. When I reset my password, where does my password get sent?
Yep.
I'm not on campus today. How can I get my email off campus?
Yep.
Like all this stuff you can just rapid fire hit it with. So I think we've already seen some of that. We're gonna see more of it.
We're definitely gonna see more of it. And the saddest thing about this is these are tools that with time and maturity could be like really great, and they would just be tools. They would just be assistants to help with things. But because of the desire to move fast, fast IT, which I am not very much of a fan of, and doing things like seeking profit or seeking promotion, people sidestep the need for security. And I mean, I've even seen it where like a company, like normally the people in the IT security team, whether it's your InfoSec or your, STO or something like that, they're sitting there and they're like, well, no, this is not something that will allow you to do. You can't put put sensitive information into something like this because it's too easy to get that stuff back out. Now they're saying, well, because the company's kind of depending on this to make like profit and to be competitive, you can put sensitive stuff into it. You just have to be mindful of it. And if you do something that puts sensitive stuff into it, we'll deal with it when, it kind of comes around. And that is just the wrong mindset to have, because ultimately, you'll get short-term profit. And I know that that's like kind of the way that people think about that stuff. But in the end, it's going to come back around to bite you in the butt. And hopefully you're not here at that point in time. I mean,
yeah, it's a real problem. Corporate structures in America. That to people that run businesses, it's always a gamble.
Yep.
Right? Like a business is a risk. Especially if you're publicly traded, there's even more risk into it. But your employees are there for stability. So when you say something like, okay, well, yeah, we're going to take a security risk with this tool, what you're really saying is you're taking, ignore any of the moral and like, what sensitive data did you leak? Is that sensitive data going to cause damage to real people? Like, let's just pretend it's not even that. It's like it's your own financial information. It only hurts the corporate entity if it gets released, in the sense of like fines and direct, stuff like that. If it happens, it's still, if you're a big enough company, going to make the news. It's still now going to impact your ability to make profit. You've made that gamble. Can I make more money doing something risky? And will I win that gamble? When you lose it, you're still damaging your company, which almost ultimately means you're going to end up having to damage your employees. So that person doing everything they're supposed to do is potentially going to lose their job because you gambled on something risky. And it's like, why take that risk? Why are we allowing companies to do things that are very potentially dangerous? We can say, oh, well, the company will just go bankrupt. It's like, okay, well, as we're seeing with all these layoffs in tech and other places, that's still, jobs. That's still people. You go check, layoffs on Reddit and stuff like that, and you're saying, yeah, I got laid off from such and such company. It's been 11 months since I've been able to find a new job. And I was previously in a very high demand skill set. And, like, that person probably shouldn't have had to lose their job for 11 months.
Yeah.
It really goes two ways. Either the company has mismanaged itself, which led them to having to lay off someone who was vital, or that person wasn't vital to begin with, and why were they hired? Like, why aren't they in a position they could have stayed in the long term?
Well, I mean, there's like three things that we could talk about there. One, why during the pandemic did we just like scoop all these people up to like different companies to keep them from going to other companies?
Yeah, I was going to say that's the answer. It's people. I can tell you this, having previously worked in an HR environment. There is a lot of emphasis in the HR world of having quote unquote top talent. I'm really of the mind that if you're not a front leader in your industry, no, you don't actually need top talent.
Right.
That little HR company was like, how do we poach people from Google? And I was like, you're not.
Yeah. It's never going to happen.
One, you don't want to pay what Google and all these other places want to pay. And that was something they didn't even want to discuss because they knew they couldn't do that. It's like, what if we had more hockey tables? It's like, that's not
how you attract
that's not
people.
how that works.
Yeah.
Two, it's unrealistic. You don't have cutting edge work. And so the people who are cutting edge don't want to work here because the reason they want to work at Google is because they want to work on cutting edge
stuff. Right. They've invested all this stuff into them learning how to do this stuff. They don't want to sit around like filling out a form for Bob and, the IT department who's been here for 50 years to be able to get his retirement. That's not the sort of thing that they want to work on.
Exactly. So it really does come down to these companies feel like they should and have to go find as many top performing people and make them their own, regardless if they actually have work for them.
Well, and I ran into that with hiring somebody once. I was told, we should be looking for unicorns. And I know there's connotations to what unicorn means, but in this, we're talking about unicorns in IT.
Yeah. People who can do multiple services and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, if you're hiring someone that already knows how to do the job, that is a special kind of like unicorn itself. It doesn't matter that they're like this multi-service person. They know how to do this job intimately well. You should hire that person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if they've got 5 tools in their tool belt and you can only maybe you only need one, but maybe the second one would come in useful. Why are you looking for somebody with 5 tools and not someone with the best tool, the one tool you need, and maybe the second tool?
Exactly.
You don't gain anything.
You just keep someone else from being able to get that person that needs the 5 tools, and ultimately that hurts you because that person may come up with some innovative someplace else, and if they ever come to work for you, then they can bring that innovation to you.
Or they'll actually, a lot of companies will argue the opposite of that. Is they're like, I want the person who knows the extra things because they might see something that our other people don't, which is valid. But also that person is probably not going to be that happy because if they don't find that new thing, they're just only using half their tool belt.
That is very true.
And the tools they're not using are getting rusty.
Well, I mean, not just that, but like it's one thing when you have someone that's like, I know how to write like standard operating procedures, or I know how to like use Excel really well. Like those are their extra 5 things. But when it's like, I am a network architect who also deals in network automation, and I know how to like create large language models that'll like watch the network and be able to like make routing decisions or something like that, and like you start like adding like these other things that like someone like a top performer somewhere might do, and like some of that's like my like qualifications. But like you have something like that, and then someone's like, yeah, but I just want someone that knows how to like use phones really well, like knows how to make a phone like network
Yeah.
work, or how to like have a really good voice VLAN. I'm not going to go work someplace like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would be crazy to go work. I don't care if you
Exactly.
pay me $300,000 a year. All my other stuff's going to like rot away. I want to go
Exactly.
someplace where I can use all of the tools that I have. And if you promise me that I can use all those tools, and then I come to your company and I can't use all those tools, you better give me something that really makes me want to use some new tools or develop some new tools,
Yeah.
or I'm out.
Exactly. There's that idea. I think especially it's really bad in tech when you look at the top performers. So when you start sitting down with the Amazons, the Googles, the Microsofts, and Apple, there's that idea of we have to hold all as much top talent as we can to better our company. But there is absolutely that. Hey, if I'm Google and I'm working on my cloud infrastructure stuff, and I don't get every good cloud engineer I can, Amazon's going to get them. And that's now that what asset could have been mine is now theirs.
Yeah.
And that's going to hurt us.
Yeah.
So there is definitely some of that as well. But it's all just silly. Because
It is.
what it comes down to is when you have to trim the fat, you're letting all those people go anyway.
Yeah.
And now they're saturating the market and they're pissed off.
Yeah, and they're never going to come back and work for you again. Nothing
Yep,
like that. No, it's
Mhm.
all right. I don't think it was that bad. Hopefully nobody heard it too much. But yeah, I mean, we could just run round and round on that all day. I think we've exhausted the LLMs run the world topic at this point.
Yeah.
At least until the next episode where we talk about LLMs doing something really bad.
Mhm.
So I think this is the end. Well, unless you have something else you want to talk
No,
about.
I'm good.
All right, so this is the end of season 7, episode 1 of the Beer and Broadband podcast. It's supposed to come out on April 1st. May come out somewhere around then, but otherwise, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.